We're talking about the multi-cloud and cloud-native pave the way for AI. Multi-cloud adoption and modernization information architecture, the value proposition of Kuber-net-ease and cloud-native technologies, challenges and solutions for hybrid multi-cloud, blueprint for successful application modernization. Ladies and gentlemen, we have with us our panelists, Michel Hamilton, Chief Strategy, Transformation and Digital Officer, Maybank, Indonesia. Well, Michel is mandated to lead and be the agent of change in the bank to shape, transform, redefine, fine-tune, and sharpen the corporate strategy, as well as ensuring the execution and benefit realization of the strategic transformation program. Michel has 16 plus years of working experience working in multinational organizations such as Accenture, EY, Commonwealth Bank, Rabobank, and Oracle. Michel has deep business and technology exposure in banking, insurance, technology, and retail domain industry. We also have Mohammad Suhada, VP IT Development, PT Bluebird TBK. Suhada is an IT strategist with more than 17 years of experience working in technology space while learning other things in life, to the extent that he believes digital transformation is not just about technology, it is about people and culture. He holds MBA in Strategic Management, supported with various industry certifications such as Project Management Professional, Risk Management Professional, Agile and Scrum, and several technical industry certification. We also have Sean Lam, the Head Data Science, SingHealth, Singapore. Well, Dr. Sean Lam is an experienced decision scientist, data science practitioner, and academician with PhD and master's from NUS. Well, Sean has spent nearly 20 years in government, research, academic, and healthcare organization. He's also a faculty member with the Duke NUS Medical School and the Singapore Management University. And this entire panel discussion is going to be moderated by Mian Lin, the Executive Director, Asia Cloud Computing Association. Mian is the Managing Director of Research Consultancy TRPC PPE Limited, and is concurrently the Executive Director of the Asia Cloud Computing Association. While Mian has extensive experience in public policy, technology policy development, and government relation communications across the Asia Pacific, and has worked with many global, regional, and local organizations such as APEC, ASEAN, PECC, the ACCA, and the Asia Internet Coalition on the thought leadership, development, government outreach, and stakeholder engagement. Also, she was appointed to the Singapore Data Protection Appeal Panel 2019-2021, and also sits on various task forces such as the World Economic Forum's Digital ASEAN's Task Force, the Data and Jurisdiction Team for the Internet, and Jurisdiction Policy Network, and has served as an EXCO member for the Internet Society Singapore chapter. So ladies and gentlemen, now it is time to pass on to this panel. Thank you so much.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to this panel on multi-cloud, cloud-native AI, and we have Sean, Michel, and Pak Suhada here. I want to encourage all 51 of you. I can't believe there's so many people on board. All of you, if you have questions, please don't wait till the end. If anything, I've learned from Joshua's previous panel that I think we're going to run out of time. So if you have any questions for our panelists, which may or may not be relevant, please feel free to ask them in the chat immediately, because, you know, I know that some people probably have questions about Maybank. You know, you can have a little bit of a insider information, like what's the interest rate going to be next month? You can ask Michel. And you can ask Pak Suhada, who is from Bluebird, like, why is it that when I call the taxi takes very long to come, you know, or for SingHealth. I'm not quite sure what you can ask SingHealth, because I think that the news has been quite stressful for Sean this year and last year because of a number of leaks from the data. But we're here to talk about multi-cloud and cloud native, and how these platforms right now just drive us towards usage of technologies, new technologies such as artificial intelligence. So I'm going to ask the panelists to do a quick introduction of what you do in your organization, and also can you give me an example of how you guys in your organization have been using multi-cloud or cloud native technologies in the first instance, and are you using them for AI? We're gonna go Mitchell first, then Pak Suhada, and then Sean.
All right, man. Thank you so much. So, hello everybody. As what is already introduced, I'm currently Chief of Strategy and Transformation for Maybank Indonesia, as well as the digital business. So, as part of our plan, right, we want to achieve our agility in serving our customers. And cloud is one of the solutions that we can think of to achieve the agility, because it's very easy to get the processing powers at the time of that you are looking for to serving your customers. So we've been running for a few past years on multi-tenancy of cloud. We do have some already working in our development and testing environments. We are looking to move forward for our production systems, but mostly that we started with the most non-critical systems, we can say, because in the banking industry, we are highly regulated. We need to make sure that we know for sure how we can protect and manage our security, and as well as the data protection as well. So we started our journey slowly but surely. We are starting by the non-critical systems, and such as our self-service employee solutions is already on the cloud. We are now trying to look for an alternative way of how we're going to manage our data, especially when we are actually talking about setting up a data lake in our system, in our organization. We are looking at the cloud solutions to help us in getting that agility, as well as the processing powers that we are looking for. So in terms of AI, we are seeing that in moving forward, the way we are saying, we're going to serve our customers in more personalized basis. So meaning through our apps, we can actually understand their behavior, we can understand their needs, we can understand what they're looking for, and how we can actually serve them in a more personalized better using the AI technology embedded into our apps and collaborating with the cloud solution. So we are starting the journey at this point in time. We are looking at that as one of the capability that we are going to embark moving forward, and how we're going to serve differently to the market.
Mm. Thank you very much, Michel. I think that this idea of data lakes is a very important one when it comes to the idea of multi-cloud and using information for AI. We'll probably come back to that a little bit longer, and I'm pretty sure some of our audience members are also going to have some questions about that. But in the meantime, let me ask Pak Suhada, what does Bluebird do? And not what does Bluebird do, but rather what do you do with cloud native or multi-cloud solutions? And are you guys using AI in any form or fashion?
Yeah, thank you, May. And hello, everyone. My name is Muhammad Suhada. You can call me Suhada, and I'm the Vice President of Information Technology in Bluebird. I am basically responsible for the implementation of the digitalization in Bluebird, starting from the development, operation, including infrastructure and then cloud as well. And yeah, talking about our journey to cloud, it is actually begins when we try to modernize our data warehouse and then using data for analytics and also AI. So yeah, we start our journey from the data and then the AI. But after that, yeah, we continue our cloud journey and use as much as possible, the cloud native technology for our system and application. And this includes also our new and self-developed dispatching system in Bluebird with IoT device as the onboard device in our taxi fleets. So that's it, man. Thank you.
Thank you for that. That sounds like a very exciting sort of a trajectory that we're going to be seeing from Bluebird. I'm looking forward to hearing you share a little bit more about some of the secret sauce that you use for Bluebird's success. Sean, from one Singapore-based person to another Singapore-based person, welcome. And would you like to tell us a little bit about how SingHealth is doing multi-cloud and cloud-native technology?
Yeah, great. Yeah, I was looking at the participant list. I realized that more than 90%, if not all, are from Indonesia. So maybe I should introduce a bit about where I'm from. Basically, it's the SingHealth cluster. So in Singapore, there are 3 health clusters under the public healthcare system. SingHealth is one of the biggest. We have under our umbrella Singapore General Hospital, I guess most of you may have heard of that. Also, KK Maternity and Pediatric Hospital, the only maternity and pediatric public hospital in Singapore, as well as Changi General Hospital and Sengkang General Hospital. And also, we are kind of like responsible for the south and southeastern, as well as the large eastern part of Singapore in terms of their population health. So there's a reason why the setup of the Singapore healthcare system has been designed such that we can take care of our population in the respective areas. But even that said, we under our umbrella, we have national disease centers as well, such as National Cancer Center, National Dental Center, Eye Center, Heart Center, and so forth. So it is a very big group. It's the largest group. We can say that more than 50% of the Singapore population will come through somehow through either the primary care as well. We have a chain of primary care clinics. We call them polyclinics, SingHealth polyclinics essentially. So we have a very huge resource, data resource that we could tap on to improve the health of the entire population for Singapore. So that's the setup where I come from. And essentially this means that data science, artificial intelligence, all this new and emerging technology is going to play a huge role in transforming our health provision services for our population and to improve the care outcomes of our patients. Okay, so that is the introduction to where I come from. I basically lead the data science practice in SingHealth. We are not a technology house, so I think most of the panelists here, as well as sponsors, really come from a technology perspective. We are essentially a care provider, and to that extent, we view this as a very key enabler to enable our transformation, our digital transformation to the next leap. So I'm also a faculty with Singapore Management University and Duke NUS Medical School. So I straddle between the technology side as well as the healthcare side. But I am a technical guy. I'm not a medical doctor. Yep. So that's about me. So hopefully I am able to share some thoughts that we have from Singapore. As to our cloud journey, I think we are very nascent. The reason is because of we are dealing with highly sensitive and critical kind of data. We are critical information data infrastructure essentially. So to that extent, I think we are beginning this journey. From a data science and AI developmental perspective, we have used some of the cloud services to enable us to be able to develop more sophisticated models and so forth. But it's always a challenge when we are working within such a regulated environment. Yeah, so I learned a lot from today's panel as well as talks, and this is definitely very useful for our journey towards looking at cloud and multi-cloud technologies.
Thanks, Sean. I think that our panel is actually pretty interesting because the work that all of you do, the panel is made out of Michel, who is from the finance sector, yourself, who is from the healthcare sector, and Suhada, who is from the transport, and I would dare say actually logistics sector, because it's really about moving things here and there. And I think that this is really the issue with multi-cloud and cloud-native technologies being implemented in various sectors. You actually need people who are in two different zones. You actually have to have industry knowledge, and then you actually have to have a little bit of technical knowledge. Either that, or you flip it the other way around. You have to have a lot of technical knowledge and a little bit of industry knowledge. And I find that that's something which is pretty challenging, especially when you go down the route of wanting to move a little bit further and do actual application, like what we're talking about today. How do you actually take the deployments of multi-cloud and cloud-native strategies and then start to think, hey, how can we deploy AI in our operations? I'm going to reverse the order in which we're answering the questions now, and I'm going to be asking, what is the one major challenge you faced when implementing cloud for AI in your organization? And I'd like to, for all of you to focus a little bit on sharing with our attendees, who, as Sean, you pointed out, are mostly in Indonesia, that for your sector, I mean, what are some tips or that you could give for, here's a little bit of a hint if you want to be looking at this for the healthcare sector, for the transport sector, for the banking sector. Here's something which you really need to pay attention to. So for example, Sean, you mentioned that that as a regulated sector, it's actually has been a little bit tricky. And could you share a little bit about that type of challenge? Because I do know that For the banking sector, you have one regulator or two regulators, right? OJK and DI. So you generally know that these are the people that you have to respond to. For the transport sector, I think that is the Ministry of Transport. And I think Suhada can tell me a little bit more and educate me about this. But Sean, I do know also that the healthcare sector is a bit more complex, to say the least, because there's Ministry of Health, but you also have the pharmaceuticals, and you have dentistry, and you have this and that, and it's sort of all over the place. I tried mapping it once, it's been a bit tricky. What is one major challenge, Sean, that you faced when trying to implement cloud in for SingHealth?
I think you rightfully pointed out that the major challenge is indeed driven because we are a very regulated industry, and we are holding a very substantial amount of sensitive data that the patient come through our system. They would have to share with us, and that's how we improve the care for the patient. So we have to be good steward to our population, our people, and that is the trust that they have on us. So to that extent, I would say that we are a bit slow, but we are taking very careful steps in understanding the cost effectiveness and the benefits that could be brought into the advancement of care through the use of cloud and multi-cloud technologies. So regulatory stems beyond, I would say, government regulations. We are not just trying to respect government regulations when we talk about things like artificial intelligence for medicine and clinical care. It goes really direct to the patients. So there's ethical framework to consider if you have a AI assisted or even a robotic surgeon and things like that. Those are, I think, not something that is near in the horizon, I would say, because healthcare is essentially very people-centric. So it's a service process that's deeply human-centric. The patient is at the heart of all we do. That's essentially what we have to remember that in everything that we do. And that said, beyond that, right, when you talk about pharmaceuticals, medical devices, and things like that is being developed with these new technologies, FDA will come into the picture from the national scene. The local scene, we have the health regulatory authority and so forth. So there's a huge, very complex ecosystem that we have to manage and overcome in order for us to be able to leverage on this new technology. But that said, right, I don't think it's an insurmountable kind of challenge. Essentially, I think it has been shared earlier, is about how we decide on the sensitivity of the data. And if we can rightfully be able to stand by what we define sensitive versus non-sensitive data, essentially a matter of data classification, some of these challenges could be overcome. But it is also not easy. Say, for example, if we just remove the identifiers, is it considered sufficiently protected in terms of data privacy, that if this data gets into hands of some rogue agents, would they be able to even identify who those people are? And it's not for all, and there are definitely very sensitive kind of conditions that we have to be very careful of. And even that said, say for example, medication data to a layman, right? It is not sensitive, it's just the medication that you take. But to a trained person, looking at the kind of medication that you take and being able to identify who that person is, you can even identify whether that person is suffering from very infectious disease and things like that. So those are very important considerations, and that actually places healthcare data into a very high grade of critical information that we have to protect, being good steward to this data. And beyond data classification, I think the regulatory landscape will have to evolve rapidly to overcome this challenge. The necessity for data, if they go onto the cloud, has to be first and foremost, according to the government policy, should be resident within Singapore data centers. So those are being set up. We have Google Cloud, we have Google, we have Microsoft, we have Amazon, AWS as well, having data centers, AZs within Singapore. So government commercial cloud is something that has been set up. And even that said, right, we are very, as a whole government, we are pretty aggressive. There is a cloud first kind of policy that was started about 2 years back. I think over the 5 years, we have seen agencies, some of them moving quite significantly to use cloud services, which essentially is the benefit that it brings to our table. So data security, privacy protection, regulations, as well as the ability to ensure that the data and the systems that is being set up are well protected within the shores of Singapore. So those are the challenges that I think we have to ensure that we can overcome. And I think being able to think through that, establish rigorous as well as clear policy guidelines will really help to support our move towards the use of cloud technologies. Yeah.
Thanks, Sean. It sounds like it's actually really complex. I mean, this idea of data governance and data classification and the management of how you want to anonymize, pseudo-anonymize, or quasi-anonymize the data in order to be both protected as well as simultaneously useful. It sounds like it's tricky. I remember one of my friends, when I was talking to her about the protection of health data, she mentioned that health data is pretty important. We agreed. Health data is pretty important because unlike other types of data, like let's say your bank account information or let's say your passwords and stuff like that, your health data, once it's leaked, you can't unleak it. If you have, for example, a history of hypertension, and that information is out there, even if you collect it back, I mean, people already know that you have hypertension. So that has a lot of implications for I guess, for insurance and other sort of financial goods and services. But well, let's just park that. I'd be interested to hear if some similar challenges exist within the transport sector. So Pak Suhada, what do you think? Is that the same challenge for you?
Well, more or less it's the same, but I mean, well, if we are talking about the major challenge when implementing cloud for AI, well, I guess the non-technical challenge is to convince the top management why we need to use the cloud, right? I mean, for us, the transportation company, the one that already exists, like 48 years. Well, we already invested a lot in on-prem technology, and then suddenly we want to move to cloud. So this is the biggest question from the top management: why you need to move to cloud, right? But if we are talking about the technical, I think for us, our biggest challenge to move to the cloud for AI and data is to consolidate all the data that is scattered all over the places into our what you call modern data warehouse in the cloud. So you can imagine Bluebird is operating in multiple cities in Indonesia. Approximately we have around 70 depots, or in Bahasa Indonesia we call it a taxi pool. And we also have the headquarters. So data engineering, like ETL, creating the data pipeline is really a headache for us. And we really need to focus on that so we can have the data consolidated into one place, and then use that data for the AI and the analytics. So, but I guess moving to the cloud itself is inevitable because in transportation industry, our competitor is no longer the other taxi companies. Is now the technology driven company like Grab or Gojek. So yeah, if we don't want to lose our share on that industry, we need to catch up, and moving to cloud is inevitable. Using AI is inevitable.
Thanks, Pak Suhada. I really enjoy using Bluebird when I'm in Indonesia. The one thing that I remember having the biggest complaint about to my friends when I went to Indonesia was that when you guys came out with the app first, it didn't allow international numbers to be recognized. So I was like, oh no, I have to go to Indonesia. I got to go and get a local SIM card in order to just book a taxi. That's a problem. All right. Well, thank you for that. I think that yes,
you can do you can do it with your own SIM card now.
Yes, now I think international numbers are accepted. When I did that, I was like, if not, I would always have to ask my colleagues or my friends to, hey, can you book me a taxi? All right. So yes, I think that is massively important. That idea of pulling together all of that information and making sure that people actually understand from your own company the importance of the digital transformation that needs to happen, and then as what Sean mentioned, this idea of like, making sure that you protect the information, because this is not just important for an efficiency standpoint, but like you pointed out, it's important for a competitive standpoint, survival of the fittest competition. I think that is so important. And I'm this idea of, it's AI is inevitable. I'm still sort of not really sure, because there are a lot of considerations about using AI. I think Sean probably has some insight on the ethical considerations of using AI. So we'll also have to find out what exactly the definition of what AI is. But let's park that one and let's go to Pak Michel, and let's hear about some of the challenges that he's had moving to cloud when he's moving his workloads onto new digital transformation.
All right, so thanks. I think we are probably having the same concerns and challenges as what Sean and Suhada already mentioned as well. But what's important is for us to really understand the use cases and what is the benefit. And when we talk about benefit, what we want to stay true in our value is the customer is at the center of our business. So we want to make sure we are actually solving real customer problems. So I guess previously, probably in the past, the most important one is how we can actually come up with the right business case, with the right use cases, with the right relevant solutions that can serve the customers, right? And then we know for sure the rapid of changes of the behavior of customer is not easy to follow if we don't put the right technology, if we don't put the right solutions in place. And we want to get the agility. So that's the key words, I think, for us to adopt the cloud. It's not really about the technology adoptions, but it's about the capability that we want to get at the right time, at the right place. And mostly our challenges is because we are a bank that is already being multi-years in the country, right? We have so many legacy system probably is already in a traditional architecture solutions, and then we need to actually revamp that a bit. From the monolithic kind of architectures into microservices architectures, and make it ready to be a cloud basis. And when we talk about cloud, it's not really, it's a march order that we need to go to cloud, everything else needs to go to cloud, right? We need to really pick and choose which one that is actually critical and which one is actually giving the value. At the end of the day, we probably will adopt, it's not only multi-tenancy of cloud, but also hybrid between on-premise and on-cloud, right? What are the things that we need to put on cloud? What are the things that we need to put on-premise? And finding the right balance, finding that equilibrium on that is one of the key decision making that is difficult, right? And how is that needs to be continuously be evaluated, right? It's not something that you can actually create once framework, one parameters that is fit for all, but you need to continuously evaluate which one that you think is right for you to go to cloud and which one that you think you need to stay on-premise. And how can we adopt this multi-cloud to get the optimum results? So that kind of conversation, that kind of exercise, that will take a bit of time. And knowing being a bank also is probably not as regulated as the health industry, but it's still very regulated. We have very much a lot of policy and procedures, corporate governance, local and global, that we need to follow. But the good thing is we are looking at from the executive level and also from the group that going to digital, right, is the way to go forward. And if we want to go digital, we need to make sure that we are adopting the right technology, adopting the right solutions, and making sure that we are able to flexibility and have the agility to release new version, release new capability in a very quick way, and introduce this kind of MVP kind of a model, minimum viable products up to the market at speed, and test it and see what is the things that we need to fine tune, and use that in a way that we don't need to actually invest too much at the beginning, right? And that's where cloud also helping us to achieve that kind of benefit. So it depends on the use cases. It depends on what sort of benefit that we want to get. And you look at the cloud not as a bulletproof or a silver bullet solution, that you always need to go to cloud, but you need to really find the right balance before you make the decision.
Thanks, Pak Michel. I really like that sentence that you said, the customers are the center of your business. I think if you flip it the other way around, it means that what you're looking for is not just to go to cloud because it's the new sexy thing. You don't use the technology just because it's fun or somebody has just sold it to you, but rather you're looking for a solution that is fit for your purpose. So you're looking to solve an issue.
Yeah. So the strategy of our bank is not going to the cloud. The strategy is to solve the customer problems. But the enabler of our strategy is one of them is cloud. So we look at that as an enabler, not we are looking cloud as our strategy or our vision to go to.
And I really like that. I think that makes a lot of sense because you don't just go for the next new thing just because it's the next new thing, but rather just focus on what will actually solve a problem. And I think that's something which it's a very engineering mindset, which I really enjoy. It's good. You're trying to solve problems that actually matter. The last question that I have for you before we turn it over to the audience, and please, if you are in the audience and if you're watching here, please do feel free to ask your questions into the chat box or raise your hand and we'll get to you. Actually, better to ask your questions in the chat box, because if you raise your hand, I have to scroll up and down to look for you. So please do ask your questions in the chat box. Please do ask your questions right now because we are running a little bit out of time. I'm going to ask the panelists one last question before we turn it over to just chit chat as well as questions from the audience about what would our panelists, how would you advise people to start when they're thinking about AI in general? And I'm going to qualify this by saying that we're not really sure exactly what AI is. So if you can explain a little bit what you think AI is, or what your company and what your industry is looking at when it talks about AI, I think that would be really useful. We're going to let Pak Suhada start first and then go to Pak Michel and then to Sean in this particular round, so that I can let Pak Suhada start for the first time for one opportunity.
All right, thanks, May. And so, if we are talking about AI, well, Bluebird is using AI for several things actually. For example, we are currently in the cooking of using AI for dynamic pricing, for example. So, although we are regulated with the meter or other regulation, but we do have the fixed price that we can play around and then do the dynamic pricing. That is one thing, and the other thing that we use AI is also for the demand prediction. So we try to basically look into our historical order data, and playing around with the order data, where the pickup point is, and when is the peak time for the taxi orders, and we try to create a model from that data, and then give the insight to the driver, so they can basically get more rides than they actually have right now. But again, if I can advise people where to start when they are thinking about AI, I think many organizations think that if you want to have AI, that then what you need is just to have bunch of data scientists or analysts, and you can get your AI. Don't get me wrong, they are indeed play a vital role in this AI journey, but people tend to forget that data analysts and data scientists cannot do the magic without the data itself. So first thing first, you need to set up the data warehouse, create the data pipelines from various sources to fill up the data warehouse with clean and meaningful data. Then you can create your AI basically. If you are a new company, starts your journey with the cloud from the beginning, I think it's lucky for you. But if you are like us, a company that already exists for quite a long time, this is not an easy job. But I think this is still the first thing you need to do if you want to move to the cloud.
Thanks for that. Yes, this idea of AI, I think we always forget that, yes, it depends very much on what Sean meant. I think, no, what Mitchell mentioned earlier about this idea of having a data lake, making sure that all of your data is actually there for people to make sense of. And I will qualify this because we have seen quite a lot of early AI models which have spit out nonsense rather than sense, even if they have a very, very big data lake. But now I will hand the time to, I think it was Mitchell, right? To have tell us a little bit about, you know, what's the one thing that you would advise people if you want to move to AI? What would you advise?
Well, I guess the same what Suhada mentioned, that is actually having the right data at the right place is the first thing that you need to get, right? I mean, without data, what do you want to analyze? And without the analysis, what do you want to give the insight? So it is really important for us to establish the right data model, the data pipeline, the data governance, the data management, the data lake, everything related to data. And when you're comfortable with your data, and then you start to analyze, giving the insights, and the insight itself is the intelligence, right? Then intelligence itself, it doesn't mean the intelligence for the company, but intelligence can be given back to the customers, right? As in banking, traditionally we have RMs, right? And what's the purpose of the RM? Is to give the insight to the customer, right? When is the right time to buy? When is the right time to sell? When is the right time to save? When is the right time to put your time deposits? So that's the real intelligence, right? A human being intelligence given to the customers. We want to continue giving that, right? But we have very limited human power, right? To really be able to do so into our mass banking, right? To all of our customers. And that's where the AI will play a critical role to give a sort of intelligence back to our customers, giving the intelligence, giving the insights to them. What do they need to do to manage their fund, to manage their wealth? What is the right time to actually have a mortgage? What is the right time is actually to have your car loan? What is the right time to actually put your money into the mutual fund? So, and this is like your virtual advisor, right? And having a virtual advisor, you can have a conversation and you have a second opinion beyond yourself. So that's how we're going to treat AI, is actually to give the intelligence, to give the insights back, not to only to our company. If it's only for company, right? It means that we know for sure how we're going to squeeze the money from the customers, right? But for the customers, right, we want to give the right intelligence to the customer and how they can actually manage their fund and wealth properly through the intelligence that we give from the machine.
Indeed, I think that is the true limitation of AI. It really depends on what the machine can possibly do. So we're gonna really work on that. And I think that, again, your focus on making the solution to a problem, the focus is actually a pretty important one, especially when we're looking at all of the different technologies that we could be applying here. Last couple of minutes, over to you, Sean, to tell us what would you advise when people are starting out thinking about AI in the healthcare industry.
Okay, so maybe I will try to answer the first question. How do I see AI and the advice on how to make use of AI? Okay, so this is a bit controversial, right? I really think that AI is a buzzword. It is a very hot buzzword that probably could get investment, could get funding, and everybody is jumping on board. And you have the most sexy idea, you probably can get the money. That is a joke. So basically, that sidetracks a bit. From healthcare and a human-centric service process perspective, I would think that really, I think AI by itself, with it or without it, right? The core is really to enhance the care of our patients, the services that we provide to the people that we care for. And really, if you ask me, there's nothing artificial about this thing. The closest how it can help us as humankind or humanity in healthcare, I would say that it can augment our ability. So it can, for example, bring a primary care doctor, a general practitioner, to the level of a heart specialist. When you see a primary care doctor, that is really something that will transform the landscape of AI. Nurses, for example, when they care for patients, if you can bring them up to the level of a doctor to be able to diagnose and identify risk upfront, I think there's a lot of benefit that we can see from there. And essentially, as Michel has mentioned, it is not about the service providers being able to augment the ability to make us superhumans, kind of having done 7 years of medical school, I can become a specialist, is beyond that. It's also for the patients themselves to be able to understand how to take care of themselves even before coming to the doctor. So there's these 3 pillars that the Ministry of Health in Singapore has always been advocating. We have to go beyond the hospital to the community. Really, it's the patient self-care, the community care, how to actually support them and enhance the ability to provide such care for themselves, even before reaching the healthcare system. That's what we're trying to do. So this is very specific for public healthcare, because what we are doing is we don't want customers. If you don't come, we are even happier. So you better stay in the community, you better stay healthy. Yeah, so it's really beyond hospital to the community, beyond healthcare to health. Take care of your own health, and beyond quality to value, meaning cost effectiveness, the sustainability of care. Singapore resources extremely limited. That's that much we have in our reserve. We can always draw on it, but that's apart from. Okay, so the other thing is about the idea of data. Data we have a lot, but and I always say that we have a lot of rubbish as well. So there is actually a whole process of being able to make use of the data in a meaningful way. And data scientist is really just one part of that picture. And what we are trying to develop is also beyond data scientists as technologists, but even the clinicians themselves, the nurses themselves, the people who actually touch the patient, understand the real problems of that thing that they are facing in terms of taking care of that patient. They could become data scientists. And we have this idea of citizen data scientists, because they know the problem much better than any PhD or any data science guy who sits behind a computer, because we are really dealing with very translational kind of models and technologies to transform care. And just now, I think Park Michel as well as the other panelist has shared the idea of identifying the right use case, and beyond that, the implementation journey, I think, is important to consider, even right from the start. Meaning, how are you going to implement? How are you going to rigorously evaluate the outcomes and the benefits of that particular technology in the entire implementation process? Has to be rigorously thought through. The reason is because I'm coming from a service provider's perspective. We do not want a technology that disrupts the care of the doctor with the patient to the extent that even disrupt that relationship. Because rather than looking at the patient, they are looking at some algorithm or some risk scores, and that kind of touch, human touch that's necessary in healthcare is gone. So to a certain extent, it goes beyond identifying a use case, even how you're going to integrate with the existing processes. And ultimately, it's going to benefit the patients. It's going to benefit the service provision process. So basically, I would say that, and I agree with all the panelists, that really they are enablers. And to think through how to actually make full use of it, I think is challenging. It takes a lot of areas of consideration. It goes beyond computational and IT perspective. It leverages on, particularly for medicine and healthcare, leverages a lot on rigorous statistical perspective for the evaluation of outcomes. And ultimately, the most important is the human perspective, the health services kind of perspective that is important. Yeah, so I mean, we always have to think through quite a bit of things to fully understand. And that's the reason why it's so interesting in healthcare, because everybody is asking for the right use case, and that itself is a very deep challenge. Yeah.
Too many use cases, I think.
Yeah, that's right.
I do agree. I do agree that where we really do want to move from health diagnosis and treatment to the concept of wellness. Like, don't come to the hospital to get treated. We want you to be well, and we want to be out. So just to round up, because I do know that we are out of time, it looks like we have 3 clear takeaways from here. Number one is that the multi-cloud technology, AI, all of the benefits are clear, but the implementation is a bit of an issue. It should not disrupt the actual process of serving your customer or making the client feel comfortable with the doctor, etc., or making sure that he can get from point A to point B. That's number one. Number two, it sounds like regulations and data governance are a little bit of a pain point right now, trying to figure out like what exactly, how do we slice and dice the data? How do we create these data lakes? How do we do data classification? That appears to be one of the pain points. But number three, I think that we all of our panelists agree that the solutions have to be fit for purpose. It has to place the customer or the recipient right at the center of the solutions, and not just come up with the sexiest technology and putting it together and saying, here's the new package, which you didn't ask for, but we're going to give it to you anyway. Thank you very much for being a part of this session. We really appreciate you being here. Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Pak Michel. Thank you, Pak Suhada. I really appreciate your time. I'm going to hand it over to Nadia.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mian, Michel, Suhada, and Sean. Thank you for joining us.